Welcome to the Functionized podcast. We're here today with our guest, Veejay Jones, who, believe it or not, at the age of 16, won his first Spartan race. He has been called the Prodigy. Veejay has fit his own big shoes by backing up the hype, showing us he is more than just a one-time wonder. Veejay is the 2019 North American OCR 3K champ, the 2021 World OCR champ at 3K, and the 2021 Spartan U.S. Nationals champion. Veejay has also won a crap ton of other races to earn these honors and awards in the meanwhile, which is, well, it's more than we have time to list each one. So, Veejay, thank you so much for being with us at the Functionized podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me, man. That's such a nice, warm welcome.
We do what we can here. So, Veejay, if you would, could you give our listeners here a little bit about your background? Where you came from, after the diaper phase.
After the diaper phase.
After the diaper phase, yeah.
Well, I've been an athlete of some form my entire life. I started racing BMX when I was 4 years old. I won my first national race when I was 5, and I raced BMX probably for about 8 years until that adolescent phase, early teens. So I was always kind of pursuing something. It wasn't like big training or anything like that, but it was just an athletic endeavor where, you had to develop a lot of body awareness, and it was pretty much just like these big anaerobic sprint efforts all the time. So always some kind of athletics going on. From there, I played a little bit of soccer in the meantime, played baseball for a year, wasn't really my thing. Ran a couple of school track meets, which were really cool. Turned out I was kind of a good runner. So moving into high school, transitioned into cross country and track, and I really kind of found my stride there. And really dove into that. That's why I stopped racing bicycles and I moved into the full endurance running game, trying to, chasing school records and things like that. And it was kind of a weird situation. I started at a really good school for my first 2 years of high school, and I made a lot of improvements very quickly. And then moving into my junior year, I transferred schools, and the coaching just wasn't at that school. There wasn't any coaching really. There was hardly a track team, and I just tried to do what I could on my own to kind of build that, but I never really reached the potential that I knew I had. I never actually improved after my sophomore year. So coming out of high school, I started doing some obstacle racing, some local stuff in SoCal where I lived. And it turned out I was pretty good at that too. I've kind of considered myself a kind of jack of all trades athlete. I'm really good at almost anything, but I'm not great at any one thing, which has kind of been a bummer. When I started high school, it was all endurance. It was mile, 2 mile, and 5K for cross country. And then my senior year, I transitioned and started doing the 300-meter hurdles and high jump. And I went to state for both cross country for distance, and I went to state for the 300-meter hurdles. So I was capable across many realms, but I wasn't going to be state champion in either of those, right? So OCR was a really cool fit for me, where it required so many different skill sets. And combining all of those into a single athlete really is kind of a challenge for a lot of people. And I liked that challenge, and it fit my skill set really well. So I found success really, really quickly. My second Spartan race was the first one that I won when I was 16. I was still in high school. It was my senior year of high school. And success just kind of kept rolling from there. And I really dove into understanding the body and learning about metabolic physiology and how to train for endurance and really level that up. So started working with a coach and really taking it seriously. And the main problem was I was really good at this at a young age, but I didn't have enough history to train the way that you needed to be really, really successful in this sport. Because a lot of the championships, at least when I was starting to get into the sport, were longer distance championships, and you need to be able to stack a lot of volume. And that takes time to build up to. So for someone like me who found a lot of success really quickly, I knew like the toll it would take on my body if I rushed into it. So I had to be patient and slowly develop volume over a couple of years. And I'm really glad I did that because I've stayed healthy through the entire process. And now I'm in a place where I can put in really hard work and my body's ready for it. And, I'm winning championships because of it. So I'm no regrets. It's all good.
Just curious, what was your best time in high school?
High school, like my sophomore year, I ran a 15:30 for like 3-mile cross country, and then I never got better. I became more powerful and like stronger, and I ran like even on hilly courses, I could always get like that 15:30 mark, but I didn't know where to go to like progress past that point. So it was kind of a bummer because I knew I had so much more to give. I just didn't know how to like unlock it, where to go. So that was my best there. I ran a 4:35 in the mile, so not like anything stellar. I ran a 10:01 2-mile. So a lot of almost nice things, but nothing that was really like stand out. Yeah, I'm really close. And looking back, I don't think it was like an awful thing, but I definitely was on track to do something great when I was a sophomore in high school. And then when I lost that really great cross country team and that great coaching from that first school, it really changed like the trajectory of where I was going. Like I was like set on the colleges I wanted to go towards. I had received like a letter or two my sophomore year, and I knew like I was going to be a college cross country athlete. Like that was everything I wanted. And then it all changed.
So I'm just curious, your 5K time now, if no obstacles, obviously, because they add time to it. So what do you think is the best right now?
You're doing. So I have no idea. Since I got into OCR, I've only pursued that. But I have this calendar right behind me that has all my races for the year. And right up here is the Carlsbad 5000, which is the fastest road 5K in the country. And I'm really excited to go hop in and test myself in that realm. The goal is to get sub 15, which I think is possible. But it's definitely a different style of training and fitness that I've developed. It's like a strength running where you're just powerful to where you can push through almost anything, but you're never having to hit these real top end speeds. So I'm interested to see what I can do. Like my fitness is really high, but like that specific fast turnover road running performance hasn't really been honed. But I think I'm capable of a sub 15 performance. So that's the goal.
And that was going to be my lead. And if you had your 5K time now, what was going to be the difference? What have you been focusing on more since your high school days now that you think has made you a better runner?
Well, early in my OCR career, like after the first year that I kind of went pro and took it seriously in 2017, and I like traveled for the series, I was 18 years old. I met a guy named Rich Diaz who was a really, really big part in like my development and my success early on in the sport. And he taught me the value of running mechanics and skill work and everything that's involved with that. And that became a really, really big part in my training philosophy and like the fundamentals of what I wanted to be as an athlete. So I took that really, really seriously across the first couple of years. And I'd say like that was a big, big part of my success early on and even now I can show up to a race and I know that I don't have the best fitness there. I'm not the fittest athlete on the start line, but my mechanics are so efficient that I can push and perform in kind of levels higher in like fitness relative to other athletes because of the efficiency and how comfortable I am at speed. So that was that's probably like the biggest thing that I focused on over the last couple of years, and then slowly building volume, and to where like the last 2 years have really been focused on just aerobic development as well as the skill work, because the skill work is like a mainstay that happens every week. It's kind of integral in what I do. And now I'm just trying to develop volume to where that energy system is a lot stronger than it used to be. And I think like that's been probably like why last year was so successful beyond other years.
Very methodical in your training. A lot of people think you just go out there and show up and, step on a podium without putting in the time and effort here. Did it take you a while to figure out that there's going to have to be a lot more behind the scenes going on than when you first started out?
No, growing up doing, a bunch of different sports, but mainly when I got into cross country and track, it's like you understand that there's a process to building fitness. And if you do it right, you really enjoy the process, which is cool. Mm-hmm. And I've started enjoying the process a lot more lately. Ultimately, I wouldn't train if there weren't for races. Like I'm not one of those athletes that can do that. But no, I wasn't overwhelmed with the amount of work, but I knew it was going to take a couple years to get to the level that I wanted to be at. Mm-hmm. And I didn't try to rush that because I knew if I overloaded myself too early, like a lot of young, talented athletes can burn out, mm-hmm. Even in like the collegiate level where they just get run into the ground looking like coaches looking for championships and things like that. So I'm really glad I just took my time. And I'm really happy with where I'm at now. And I still have I'm probably one of the few athletes in the sport that really tries to plan ahead. Like I have goals laid out, 3 to 5 years out kind of right now, like where I want to be and the kind of athlete that I want to be in a few years. So everything's always building towards the next goal.
You were talking a little bit before the show with your board behind you there.
Yeah.
How many races do you have for this season planned so far?
I'm kind of splitting 50-50 this year, where in years past, especially last year and pretty much every year, I've been 100% OCR focused, dedicated to that sport. Mm-hmm. And I've kind of found more of a passion for running and trail running. So I'm kind of trying to dive into that space a little bit. I feel like I have something to give there and I can get more out of myself pursuing that as well as OCR. I'll never let OCR go. I like it way too much, but I'd like to see what I could accomplish there. But actually, right now I have the 4 races that I'm going to do of the 5-race series for the North American Elite Series. I'm pursuing that. I'm going back to OCR Worlds to try to maintain that title that I have and pursue another one. Plus, I didn't get to race the undefeated champion. He wasn't able to make the race this past year. So I feel like I didn't really earn it as much as I wanted to. Okay. When I raced the U.S. National Series, I had to beat the current champion and the guy that's won the championship the most to take it. So It felt like I really earned that. And I liked having that accomplishment. And I wanted the same thing with OCR Worlds, where you take the guy that's won it more than anyone else, and he's never been beat even now. So I feel like to be the champion, I really want to have to take down the champion. So I'm hoping I get the chance to race him this year. But I have I'd say, I think 7 obstacle course races on the schedule, possibly 8. Mm-hmm. And then the rest is all trail races where I have some Cirque series in Colorado and Utah. I'm going to go out to California and Tahoe for Broken Arrow Sky Race. Maybe go international if I feel good enough. But ultimately, the goal is sometime before I'm 30 to see if I can build enough fitness and be talented enough to attend a Golden Trail Series race. It would be totally foolish for me to even show my face at one of those events because I'm not nearly the caliber of those guys. But the goal would be to reach that kind of level to where I could show up to a race like that and not just get totally blown out of the water and possibly even compete for it. So that's my goal for the next few years.
Okay. So what are you going to do to ramp up your training for that?
Main thing's volume, man.
Seems to be the general theme here.
Pretty much. I've been just a very low volume athlete compared to most other athletes in the sport. If you compared Stravas with a lot of other athletes, it would be a very different story. Last year, I won the U.S. National Series on about 35 miles a week, which is extremely low for many athletes. And that was a more consistent volume year for me. And I averaged 35 miles a week. So the goal is to just keep ramping that up until I can sustain. I don't like to go by mileage very much. I like to measure hours. So right now, my training currently is sitting at about 6.5 hours a week, just running, not involving strength and those sort of things. And I just want to keep seeing that number slowly climb and get to the point where my just aerobic energy system is just really, really beefed up to where I can sustain more work.
To get this right here, so instead of having 5 miles today, 7 tomorrow, and so forth, do you have it as, all right, I'm going to do an hour today, maybe 45 minutes tomorrow, 3 hours? So interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Because being a trail athlete, it's like, like one trail versus another, it's going to be completely different. So if you want a consistent demand on your body, you can't be like, I'm going to go run 6 miles, because you run flat 6 miles, that'll take you, 40 minutes. Or if you run like a climbing 6 miles when you're up in the mountains, that'll take you an hour, so they're very different demands. So I try to do everything time-based. But since I'm trying to get ready for some like specific longer races, we are setting mileage for some of my longer runs, but we're assuming that I'm doing that in the mountains, or at least on some form of trail. So I have to cover that ground, and usually that's like, carrying me over 2 hours. We're just going to try to keep that pushing the mileage and the time up, because say if you go out for a 2-hour run, but you're not clearing the distance of your longest race that you're going to be competing in this year, like you got to make sure you're getting the mileage as well. Like your feet are actually covering that distance.
Makes sense. Yeah. What's your favorite course?
Oh, that's a rough question. Like OCR, like like race that I've done, like venue maybe, or like distance.
Venue.
I don't know. I've had a lot of great experiences. One thing that's been really like close to me for the past couple of years has been the race in Seattle. And well, it's not Seattle. It's like Snohomish, I think, is the city that it's in. I really like that venue. It's got a little bit of climbing. It's a little bit of technical trail, and it's always like super wet and rainy. Like it's always raining during that event. So it makes it very challenging to run well, but there's a lot of open, fast running there too. And I've had some really awesome experiences there. That's where I got my first U.S. National Series podium. That's I've never won there. Now that I realize it, like I've never won that U.S. National Series race, but I've had some great experiences there, and it's always been really, really fun. But I don't know. I'm kind of opening up to the mountains a little more. Like historically, I always enjoyed them, but I never performed well there. And now that I've kind of gotten that skill to kind of develop over the last year, I'm really enjoying those. So I'm really looking forward to going back to Big Bear this year to really like prove to myself that like I am ready for those mountains, because that's a brutal course. It's straight up and straight down a few times. So you got to really have like your legs under you. And I enjoyed it last year.
Okay. How about biggest rival? Is there one guy that is like your Lex Luthor?
I mean, not for like always, but lately, over the past few years at least, since like 2019, it's been Ryan Atkins. He's arguably the greatest athlete that's been in this sport, and he's been doing it a lot longer than I have. Pretty much when he showed up, I don't know what year it was, but I remember seeing races back in like 2015, world championship level events where he was just crushing. So, I mean, he's an amazing athlete, and I've been able to start competing at his level. Like when I first got into the sport, I really like looked up to him, and as I got better and better and closer to him, and now we compete, which is really, really cool. We've gone back and forth so many times, and I'd say he's like the biggest competition for me. And I always know that when we're on the start line together, like it's going to be a fight. Like it's not going to be easy ever. So I really love racing with that guy. He's a very talented athlete.
Seems like one of the, as Steve Fontaine said, it's going to be an all guts race at the end. Whoever's got it that day between the ears is going to push through that pain, just that little extra.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what happened this past year in Big Bear. Like I think that I really wanted that race probably more than he did, because we were separated by 7 seconds
close
at the end of that race across something that took an hour. So that's a tiny little decision to move at one point or another. Like there's so many different variables that could have led to a 7-second difference in your performance. And that was the race for the entire series because we were tied up until that point. So the entire US National Series came down to a 7-second difference. And I think like mentally, I just wanted that a lot more than he did. But I think that was a good motivation for him because then he went out and won the Spartan World Championships, and it came down to a close race at the end. And he turned on the jets and finished out that race and got that title. So yeah, I totally agree with that.
So perhaps you have a part to play in his world championship too,
huh? He said I did in an interview after the race. He thanked me for beating him in Big Bear, because then when it came down to the race at the end of the World Championships, he was like, he pushed harder. So I mean, you're welcome, I guess. No, but like I love racing that guy. It's really impressive to see what he can do.
Now, let me get your opinion here. The two sports, you got obstacle course racing and you've got CrossFit. CrossFit claims to produce the fittest on earth. Now, you do a OCR, you get everything as well with the extra added endurance. How do you think that the two sports could have kind of a in-between event to see like a showdown? Who's actually the fittest? Veejay Jones or Matt Frazier?
I'd say the closest thing you have to an actual fittest test would be high rocks currently, because ultimately OCR is still an endurance sport. That's why an athlete like myself does so well. And I'm a very runner build. I mean, I am probably 20 pounds heavier than my elite running frame would be, but still it's an endurance sport. The best runners are going to have a huge leg up over the strongest dudes. And I think CrossFit is very heavily weighted because their endurance, honestly, across most of those dudes is pretty lacking. And a lot of the events are very short. There's nothing that really pushes into that aerobic energy system for a long period of time.
Right.
Like there's the occasional thing that features it, but it's not like you're seeing like these really high level performances there. It's like a bunch of dudes shuffling around, like trying to maintain best they can. But then they can go snatch 300 pounds, which an OCR athlete could never even dream of completing that task. That's insane.
Yeah.
So they are, I mean, both combine multiple disciplines, but neither, I think, is like a real test of both energy systems equally. I'd say if you saw like a high rocks heavy or something like that with like even more strength involved, that's where you'd see something to like, I don't know. I think high rocks is the best balance so far because the races take you an hour. So you have to be very aerobically fit. You have to have a big cardio engine. But at the same time, like you have to be able to move weight. That's why like an athlete like myself, I haven't even tried a high rocks event because I know that it's going to require me to change my body so much that I won't be, a US National Series champion athlete anymore. I'll be some kind of high rocks hybrid athlete. Right. So, I mean, yeah, I think there's opportunity to find something that kind of combines, especially if you did like a full event, like a CrossFit Games style thing, but had more endurance intermixed. And I think the thing that's really difficult about high rocks is how much skill is involved, how much with all the Olympic lifting and that sort of thing, and the amount of form and mechanics that you have to practice to pursue. Like Olympic lifting is not easy. Like it's very difficult. And like form is at least 50% of that game. Like you got to have a lot of power, but you also have to be very, very proficient in those movements. So, yeah, I don't know, like a more endurance-based CrossFit Games, but still having like, your snatch events and those sort of things. I'd be interested to see something like that, but I don't know. I don't think like you can say that a CrossFit athlete is more fit than an endurance athlete. I mean, ultimately they probably are. Like if you want a more complete athlete, a CrossFit Games athlete is definitely a more complete athlete than someone like myself. Like I have a shot at winning the world championships in our sport. And I definitely am very like in my lane. I'm capable of other things, but I definitely stay like I'm an endurance athlete specifically. and I'm only as strong as I need to be.
Yep.
So it's really different.
So when it does come to your training, how many times a day do you currently train?
Well, I'm only about a month in. I
Mhm.
started on the first of the year. I had like a unfortunately long off season to where I was like I should have started training back in probably November, like around Thanksgiving time, but I didn't get to start until the first. So right now I'm training. I'm running 6 days a week currently. Um, I'll only train 6 days a week. I'll never cross that like 7 day barrier.
Mhm.
I believe in having like a very dedicated off day. So 6 days a week I'm running um, with 2 to 3 strength days in there, but everything's separated right now. I'm not doing any like OCR workouts where, or like compromise workouts as people like to refer to those as where you run as an interval, you come in, you do some strength movements, go back out, or you're hopping on obstacles, anything like that. Everything's very segregated right now. So 6 days a week of running and 2 to 3 days of strength right now.
Okay. How about nutrition? Do you follow a certain type of program for yourself, or kind of just if you see it, eat it?
Pretty much the see it, eat it thing. I
Most,
mean, I do have rules as far as like, I'm not trying to eat out all the time and eat fast food. I mean, I don't like stop myself. Like, my girlfriend's a huge fan of Chick-fil-A. So if we drive by Chick-fil-A, like we might stop. So, but mainly it's trying to keep like a lot of carbs in the diet and just fuel the work that I'm doing. Cause when I fall behind in like eating, I feel it. I
Yeah.
feel it over the next couple of days. Like I've dug myself a caloric deficit. So I just need to stay on top of everything. I've become big friends with the Instant Pot and
Okay.
like making big batch pastas. And I have like 3 or 4 recipes that I kind of cycle through, and I always have pasta in the fridge. So I'm eating that often, but it's mainly just like try to keep calories high so that I'm not, so that I can actually maintain some weight, because I will drop weight in a heartbeat, very, very easily. So I
Yeah.
have to maintain like keep eating pretty much.
So you almost went on to bonking there. Have you ever bonked before in training or in a race?
Oh, plenty of times. Like my main enemy historically was cramping. Like I was very like salt deficient and very
Hmm.
prone to cramping in any events that would get like over an hour. I've improved that because a lot of it was I wasn't fit enough. Honestly, my muscles weren't up to the task to operate past an hour, and they're starting to get better at that. Plus, my nutrition like kind of got more dialed in as far as um, what supplements to take leading into races, um, like salts and electrolytes and things like that, and what blends work for me and how much I actually need to take.
Hmm.
So that kind of got worked out. But yeah, dude, like this past year, probably my biggest failure of the year was at OCR Worlds in the 15K. I was leading the race about 10K in,
Hmm.
and we were hiking straight up this ski mountain from the bottom to the top of the mountain. And about halfway up, my legs just didn't really want to work anymore. Mainly, it was my power hiking strategy. Like I was taking these huge steps and just totally overwhelmed my hamstrings.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, dude, like it happens. I mean, even when you're in the best of shape, your race plan doesn't work out or something happens. Like it happens to the best of them.
It does. What is your pre-race meals, supplements? What do you usually consume leading up to it?
I start like a couple days out, really like carb loading. Like I don't just do it like night before, 2 nights before. I probably start like 3 days out and just start eating like um, lots of pastas and things like that. And I start hydrating a whole week before like a race.
Hmm.
I start drinking electrolyte drinks probably like twice a day, trying to keep that really mixed in, consuming a little more than I need, just so I'm kind of like overloaded when I get to the race. But I don't try to overhydrate, because also you can, what's it called, like dilute the electrolytes in your body. So then
Nitrate.
it'll make people have like issues with that, like they're overhydrated. So I just try to mainly get electrolytes into my body, but not change my drinking habits too much. But instead of drinking water, I'll drink some kind of electrolyte blend. Um, but morning of a race, I'm big on overnight oats. That's kind of like my go-to food for training and racing. And I don't want to change it up on race day. Like I'm not going to experiment with anything new. Like I'm going to do what works.
Of course.
So I stay with that. And then like mid-race fuel, I'm really kind of picky. A lot of people can eat like all these nasty gels and stuff, and I really can't. I can eat almost anything on a long run, on low intensity. Like you could hand me a slice of pizza, and I could eat that in the middle of a 3-hour run, like no big deal. I'm not even stop. But I can't eat too many things as far as like mid-race nutrition, like hammer gels or goo or honey stinger. Like all those things mess with me. But I found this company called Morton that they make the hydrogel, which is really easy to take down for me. It's one of the only things I can consume at intensity. So that's been like my go-to race fuel. And I'm always experimenting with different like electrolyte mixes to try to figure out what works. Historically, goo Roctane has been good for me. The Summit Tea flavor specifically, that's been good. But sometimes having too many calories in my drink will actually mess me up. So I like to have electrolytes and calories very separate. So when there's too many calories, like a tailwind type of thing, that seems to be something that like triggers my GI system to not like it. So try to keep those very separate. So in like really long races, I'll actually carry a bottle that has like electrolyte mix and then one that has water, so that when I'm taking my nutrition, I can actually drink water instead of electrolytes, so that I'm not blending calories and electrolytes, because that seems to be just a recipe for disaster for me. And it's nice to use the hydrogel from Morton, because then I don't have to drink water with it right away. It's like Jello, so it just kind of goes away real quick.
Have you ever utilized exogenous ketones in your training, especially for endurance?
You know, in 2017, this dude like tried to sell me on ketones and that sort of thing, and this spray, like you'd spray it in your mouth and it like activate all that stuff. And I did not like read into it enough to really fully understand that whole system. And trying to be in like the ketogenic diet and that sort of thing. So I never really pursued that. And I've always had much more success just consuming like lots of carbs and fueling that way. And I mean, I still am pretty fat adapted as far as like when I'm racing and everything. And when I'm training, I mean, when I'm at an aerobic state run, I'm burning like 66% fat at those heart rates. So I'm not like, honestly, I'm kind of filling the air right now, but I don't understand ketones and how they work and everything like that nearly enough to really talk about it.
Fair enough. And if you don't know it, then why in the world are you going to take it before you're competing? It doesn't make sense.
Fair enough. I'm pretty old school when it comes to stuff. I mean, I like to use new science and understand heart rate training and like thresholds and how to measure thresholds and all that sort of stuff. But I don't know. I just believe in the training. I don't really supplement very heavily. A lot of people I know are taking all these kinds of vitamins and protein powders every day and BCAAs and all this stuff. And I just, there's a few things that I take. Like I take a pretty simple multivitamin. I take a calcium, magnesium, and vitamin D mix on most days, probably like 5 days a week. And then occasionally I'll supplement with like some BCAAs or like a protein shake on like bigger workout days. But I don't like load up on stuff very often. I'm pretty like reliant on just keeping a variety in my diet and trying to get stuff that way.
In the sport of OCR, I know at the elite level, you can be tested for, according to the World Anti-Doping Association rules. Do you feel that there are other athletes, as the sport becomes more competitive, that are turning to that?
I honestly don't know, man. I think it's possible. I think there are athletes out there that are doping, because I think less in the US. But there are athletes, I'm sure, out there, because there's some scary looking dudes that will just show up to a random race somewhere
Mm-hmm.
and they're way more muscular than anybody, and you can almost see their organs. They're so lean, and then they're out there just climbing mountains like an elite trail runner.
Right.
So I'm sure it's out there, but I doubt it's at the top level. I sincerely doubt that. But then again,
Mm-hmm.
I've won a world title. I've won a national championship. I've won a North American championship, and I've never been tested.
Okay.
I've never once been drug tested. So I have no clue, honestly.
Right.
Like I'd love to be tested. Like I'd like that to be a thing. And I honestly don't believe that a lot of the top athletes in the sport are using.
Mm-hmm.
I would be extremely surprised. But I'm sure there's some athletes that are taking some questionable things around the world. But I honestly don't think there's enough money in this sport yet for people to really start
Going full tilt.
taking drugs. And I mean, one dude I heard about before the championships in Abu Dhabi, he
Mhm.
got banned from like the is it IIAF or IAAF? He got popped for some performance enhancing drug, and he was going to go compete because he races in the Middle East. I think he's
Mhm.
from the Middle East, so he was going to go race the Spartan championships, and then he wasn't allowed to race because he got popped like earlier that year. So I mean, I'm glad to know that people are looking,
Right.
and to know that it's a thing. But like, I've never been tested in OCR. Like, it's never happened.
Now, when it comes to, we'll pick on Spartan here for fun because I like Spartan too.
Cool.
There's the open, you got then there's competitive age groups and elite. Now, Spartan obviously markets to the open most because, well, there's a lot more in the open and it helps pay the bills, keeps lights on, food on the table, things of that nature.
Right.
But when it comes to the elites, it seems almost like it's forgotten. I mean, if you're in the know and you appreciate the sport, people get it. But you don't see Spartan athletes up on billboards yet or being featured in commercials yet. What do you think that the sport has to do or could do better in order to promote the top athletes? Because let's face it, people like to follow athletes.
Yeah, for sure. One big downfall, I think, of the sport, and I mean, ultimately, Spartan's a business, and I understand that their whole game is selling tickets to their events, not spectators, but participants. So something that's completely participant driven, I mean, it's nice that they have an elite side of the sport at all, which is so that we can, compete.
Right.
But at the same time, what you notice a lot of sports do, like you look at the biggest ones in the world, the NFL, the NBA, they create heroes and they create storylines, and they pit athletes against each other, and it's this whole production featuring athletes that they try to make, basically, like a lot of people in the business call it like heroes. They try to create heroes that people can follow and root for. And unless you follow OCR athletes on Instagram, you don't know anything about them.
Right.
Like they're just a name on a screen. And a lot of times some of the broadcasts have been like really poor in the past, and it's boring, honestly. It's really hard to follow like some of these Spartan races because it's just a bunch of dudes running through the woods, and you don't really, like, someone watching for the first time, they don't really understand what's happening, which is kind of a bummer, especially with, like, I watched some of the U.S. National Series broadcast from this past year, and I had some people that didn't know much about OCR watch it, and they told me, like, if you didn't know what was going on, like, you wouldn't have any clue. Like, it wasn't intuitive to understand, and the announcing wasn't geared towards people watching for the first time to where they could pick up on what's going on. It was pretty much, if you're a fan of the sport, you're going to enjoy this. If you're not, then you don't know what's going on, and it's just, you're just watching these dudes like hike uphill for a while. So I think the sport needs to be like, you just need to invest a lot more in media. I think there's a lot of money being thrown around to a lot of weird stuff, and you just have to, you got to put money into broadcasting. And if you can create a good product in like post-production and everything like that, then I think you'd sell more, You could sell a TV series, or you could get bigger sponsors for your broadcasts. And then that presents opportunities for athletes to make money. Like Spartan giving athletes money, like that's cool. But ultimately, like athletes would benefit more if you had a very successful broadcast and created something people want to watch. And then people are willing to pay the athletes because so many people are watching, not just Spartan having to be like, oh, we still want to have an elite field, so we're going to throw out money to some athletes. I mean,
oh, very
at least
valid.
that's the way that I see it.
Absolutely. You hear that, Joe? All right.
OCR is exciting. Like you can make it exciting. It's just like there's so much value placed on these long, boring races in the mountains. It's like the biggest championships in the world take 2.5 hours to watch. And like in a world where content is less than a minute right now, like you lose people's attention span in 15 seconds. They need to be entertained or they're going to move on, and they're going to decide that in about 15 to 20 seconds. And you can't even create something exciting happening in the first 15 minutes of a race, you're done.
Very true. Very true. Maybe you need Snoop Dogg or something like that for the first 15 minutes as everyone gets going.
Yeah, really.
What is your biggest life obstacle, and how'd you go overcome it? Not race obstacle. You're good at that.
Life obstacle.
Yep.
Dang. I don't know, dude. Like I haven't had any like major life challenges. Like a lot of people have like a story of how they overcame it, and that's why they were so dedicated to sport. I've had a very like solid, good support system around me throughout my life. Like my dad really supported my career in OCR at the beginning. Like he paid all my entries. He flew me around to these different races to where I could compete and really shoot my shot until I was able to cover my own costs, and now I'm making money pursuing this sport. So he really facilitated like my athletics really early on. And I ended up for the last few years living with my girlfriend's family, and they were really supportive of it too. Like I was already making money in the sport, but they were just really supportive of like everything I wanted to pursue. And I don't know, I haven't had anybody around me that was like ever doubting me or anything like that. Like I've had like, as I said, just a very strong support system around me, and a lot of people willing to handle, different aspects of my life for me so that I can focus on training when it came down to those times. So
it's fortunate. Very fortunate.
Dude, super fortunate. I mean, like when I was younger, I had some, interesting situations, living in, squatting in an abandoned house for a year, things like that. But at the time, like I didn't know it was bad. I mean, sometimes when I tell people stories about things in my childhood, they're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry." And I'm like, "Well, like it wasn't a big deal because I didn't know. I didn't know it was a big deal." So I really haven't had like a life-changing struggle that I've had to really overcome. Pretty fortunate about that, actually. Once I do have a struggle, though, you best bet I'm going to hit like really big heights.
I'm confident in that one for sure. When you're not training, what are you up to?
I don't know. My life is really based around this sport at this point. But right now, I've been golfing a little bit. It's been kind of cool.
Yeah, you like that?
I mean, at first, like, I don't believe it's a sport. A lot of people are like, Tiger Woods gets Athlete of the Year. Like, no lie, he's an amazingly skilled and dedicated person to accomplishing what he's accomplished. But
Right.
like, are you an Athlete of the Year? Questionable. And I might get a lot of hate for that. But no, like, I enjoy it. Like, I've gotten into a bunch of different sports over the last couple of years, like trying to find something to do on the side. When I'm not training, and everything I go way too ham into. Like last thing was pickleball, and I would go play pickleball for like 4 hours straight, and I would come home and my recovery day was ruined. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go run 15 miles tomorrow and have a tempo run in the middle. And how am I supposed to do that after I just played pickleball for like 3 or 4 hours? True. So golf was a really low intensity thing that I could do, and it was all skill and mental. So I've kind of been enjoying that. But this year I'm trying to like use more of my free time and create more content, start getting back on YouTube and putting videos together. I just released like a training guide for age group athletes for the U.S. National Series. So I'm like really happy that that's been doing pretty well. And I want to do more stuff like that. Like I want to be more productive this year, put out guides. Like I've gained a lot of experience over the last couple of years. And if I can kind of share that in like ways that I'm comfortable, like I don't want to coach. I don't really have much interest in like writing program for a bunch of athletes because it takes a long time. And
if you're good at it, it certainly does. Yeah.
Yes, it should take a long time. But if you're also an athlete, and I'm getting coached right now, so what is working for you and what you're getting from your coaches and what's on your mind currently can start to kind of cloud what you give to other athletes and what's best for them. So I try not to do too much of that because I know that like I would start being like, well, this has been really great for me. Like this will be great for other people versus like doing it what is ideally best for them. Because the best athletes aren't the best coaches. Like that's for sure. And I mean, I'm a good athlete, but what I'm doing isn't going to work for everyone. But there's certain successful actions that I've had over the past like few years that I might start sharing in a more like detached way, but like training guides and things like that. And might start releasing some stuff like that. So I'm trying to use a little more of my free time, but probably still play golf here and there. You know.
Are you familiar with speed golf?
Dude, I was just talking to some friends, and I was actually going to approach a golf course. I want to put a speed golf tournament here. And
okay, so you have heard of it? Yes,
I definitely will. Because just they used to have like a world championships, and they, I think they're like used to be like some U.S. events that you could like go to the national championships from, but it doesn't seem to be very popular anymore. So I want to kind of bring it back if I can. But I'd love to do that. It looks really fun.
Absolutely. You have any advice for any young competitors coming up?
Be patient. Be patient and like trust the process. Like start developing the fundamentals now, and you will be like a fantastic athlete in a few years. You just have to allow yourself to develop at the right pace. I was in that same position, like 17, 18 years old, really wanting to reach that highest level. But a lot of these races are really long as far as timeline. So if you look at the natural progression of like a professional endurance athlete, right? They go to high school, they're racing, the 5K is the longest thing they do. So they're racing for 15 minutes. And then they go to, what do? They go to college, right? You go to college, top level college athlete, doing really well. You're doing the 10K, you're doing like 8K cross country, 10K cross country. You're racing for like a little over a half hour, right? And then usually people will branch out to looking at maybe half marathons for a while, continue racing at the 10K level. And then eventually, you know, when they get closer to their 30s, they start looking at being a marathon athlete. So if you look at the time duration of those events, not the distance, but the time, you're like a half hour athlete for a long, long time before you start branching into these events that are going to take you over an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours. So when an 18-year-old kid who's had a decent background wants to go race, you know, the Spartan Super in Big Bear, like you're going to be racing for over an hour, and you've only gotten used to racing for 15 minutes so far. So it's a completely different game. So it takes time. So main thing is just like develop the right way, do the skill work, develop those energy systems, and like give yourself a couple years to kind of get better at the shorter stuff, develop that speed, elongate it over time. Because if I would have dove in too hard at first, I think I would have really like just not been on the right path. But since I've developed appropriately, I've done really well, and I'm really happy with the way that things have gone. And I think like my ceiling's really high right now. So just trust the process, and you'll get there.
You had any plans for life after athletics?
A little bit. I want to stay involved in the sport.
Okay.
And I don't know what that means. If I'm going to be an announcer, if I'm going to build my own event, or if I'm just going to coach. I started something called Black Force Performance Training, which is an area where I could start doing mainly running mechanics and like gait work doing a lot of gait analysis, that sort of stuff, and just like one-on-one running sessions, where it's not programming, but just doing like performance running work in person. And I really like that. That's probably like my favorite kind of work to do. So just kind of supplementally just adding that in, doing it here and there once or twice a week. And I really enjoy that. And my idea is to kind of start now promoting it and start working with people. And then, if I can compete for another, 10, 15 years, over that next decade and a half, like I can build a decent clientele and become like well-known enough in the sport. And also my business just slowly grows until when I'm ready to step away from athletics, I have something that's already there. Like I've seen a few athletes kind of fall off the really heavily, like being really competitive and fully dedicated to athletics, and then not really know what to do after that. Like I have real expenses, and what am I going to do now? Like I have to get a regular job, and you didn't lay the foundations to transition into anything else. So I'm trying to do that now. And, maybe if I can get like content rolling, maybe I'll be an internet or TV personality or something. You never know. But yeah, I'm just going to kind of start putting my time into different avenues and see what presents itself. Because when you're putting stuff out there, something like an opportunity always presents itself. So I'm just going to keep putting stuff out there, and I'll find which direction to go. And I'll probably go in 3 different directions at the same time. But yeah, I'll be ready for it.
I think Jake Paul's looking for someone else to fight. So if you're looking for something to get into, it's an idea. Didn't say it's a good idea, but it's an idea.
You know what? They'll be like, we'll pay you $5 million to throw the fight. And I'm like, sold. I'll take that first hit and go down like a sack of potatoes. No problem. Gotcha.
Veejay, if somebody wants to find you on social or work with you, how do they do so?
Well, my name is Veejay Jones, and Veejay_Jones is my Instagram handle. And if you want to follow along with what I'm doing and what I got going on, that's the best place to do it. I post pretty much everything there, everything I got going on. Black Forest Performance Training, or Black Forest OCR, is a website, but also Black Forest OCR is an Instagram site. So you can check that out, see what's going on there as we update. Like I released that training program on the website. It's been pretty cool. It's pretty much a 26-week guide to the U.S. National Series and how to train throughout an entire season, to do your tapers, to have up weeks and down weeks, the strength, how to change your workouts for the upcoming demands. Felt like a lot of age group athletes could use a little guidance there. So I put something out. It's been doing pretty well. And it's the first week. So if you want to get into it, like you got to get in this week or else you're going to just be behind the whole time. So yeah, pretty much follow me on Instagram, and I'll update you on everything I got going on. That's the best place to be.
When's your what's your first race scheduled?
I'm looking at getting a shakeout race and like a rust buster. I'm going to go to Arizona.
Yeah. Okay.
Spartan race out there. I'm really excited to get back on the course. I don't think I'm going to be able to hit like high level fitness by the time we hit the first U.S. National Series race, or the North American Elite Series in San Luis Obispo. I think I'm going to hit that at like 90% or so, but I have enough experience and enough mojo to like carry me through and race well. And I think I still have a good shot at winning that race. So that's the goal. But I just need to get on the course and experience it. So I'll be in Arizona, and then a few weeks later, we'll be in San Luis Obispo ready to throw down.
Awesome. Veejay, I sincerely appreciate you being here from the bottom of my heart. Thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for having me, dude. This was fun.
Absolutely.